Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to my Hearts of Iron 4 beginner tutorial guide. Now, I wasn't going to do any more tutorial guides for this game because I felt like I had covered mostly everything that needed to be covered. However, there was one area where I've received a lot of questions about, on the forums, and comments of the other tutorial guides, as well as on Steam. And this area is diplomacy. Just a lot of people still, beginners that are still kind of confused about diplomacy and some of the diplomatic actions. So I figured I would go ahead and do a video on that. And while we're doing that, we're also going to cover partisan units and how to stop them, how to deal with them. So first, let's go ahead and start with diplomacy. We're going to just go ahead and just go down this list of diplomatic actions and just go through all of them. We're just going to go down this entire list of diplomatic actions and discuss each action, what they do, and why you would want to use that. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice is that some of these diplomatic actions are grayed out while others are green. And this is something that I've noticed some people who are actually familiar with the game still have been playing it for a little while, and they're still a little bit confused by this. The gray, if it's gray, then that means that you cannot take that action. And when you hover over it, it'll tell you why you cannot take it. So for instance, in this case, we can't declare war because we do not have a war goal. And then the little X's here, whether it has an X or a green check mark, this tells you whether the AI would accept it or not. So there is a difference here. For instance, when you get the invite to faction, a lot of people in some of my Let's Plays see that they'll have a country that has the green check mark for invite to faction, and they'll think that that means that we can invite them to the faction. That just means that they're willing to accept. But we can't invite them, often in the case, is because they are part of another faction. You'll see the United Kingdom's already in a faction, so there's no way that we could invite them to ours. So that is one thing that I did want to clarify. Now, the first diplomatic action that we can take here is declare war. This has a pretty obvious reason why you'd want to do this if you want to declare war on a country. However, you'll notice it's going to be grayed out with all of these countries. We cannot declare war with anybody. And the reason for that is because we have to justify a war goal on a country before we can declare war on them. Once you have a war goal, you can, when you click declare war, you'll get the option to select which war goal you want to use. Now, the war goal is essentially what the war is for, which state it's for, or it can also be for other things. If you're not attempting to conquer a state, you can have war goals for other things as well. So that brings us to the next button here, justify a war goal. If we wanted to say justify a war goal against the Netherlands so that we could declare war on them, when we select that, you'll have multiple options here. Sometimes, in this case, we have conquer. And the conquer war goal essentially means just that. We want to conquer those states that we select from them. Now, we can select anywhere from 1 to 5 states, and you can do it either through here, or you can actually do it on the map as well. I find this much easier to do. And you can do up to 5 states that you would like to justify a war goal on. Now, one thing you must consider when justifying a war goal is every time you increase the number of states that you're going to try and justify on, it's going to increase the amount of political power that you're going to need to use, the political power up here, that you're going to be able to need to use in order to justify that war goal. On top of that, it's going to increase the amount of days that it's going to take. As you're seeing, this is increasing it by quite a bit with every state that we are adding there. And then finally, it's also going to increase the amount of world tension that you're going to gain from just justifying this war goal. So just adding that increases us up to 77%. So these 3 things are all things that you're going to need to consider when you're deciding to justify a war goal. Is the political power going to be worth it? Do you have that many days? If you're trying to declare war at a certain time, maybe you don't have enough days to do that many states. And then finally, world tension. This is the most important factor here. How much is that going to impact that world tension? All things you want to consider when you're justifying war goals. All right, so these are 2 of the more important ones, obviously, when it comes to, especially if you're playing it as an Axis power. And let's move along. Next is guaranteeing the independence of a country. Now, this is primarily something that the allies are going to do. You can only justify the independence of a country that has the same ideology as you. So if we're hovering over this, you can see in our tooltip that we cannot guarantee them because they're a democratic country. And if you hover over Italy, you're also going to see that we cannot guarantee their independence because they're at war. So you cannot guarantee the independence of a country that's currently in any war. Now, the purpose to guaranteeing independence is that if another country declares war on that country, then you're going to get a call to arms so that you can declare war on that country. This is the primary method that the Allies have to declare war on the fascist or communist powers once they start being really aggressive. However, another thing to consider when guaranteeing independence is that it does reduce the world tension. So this is a double-edged sword for the Allies. They get more powerful. They can do more things. They have more abilities as the world tension increases. So the fascists usually want to keep world tension low, while the democratic powers want to get it high. As a player, of course, not in real life. But as a player, you want the world tension to get higher. So if you go guaranteeing the independence of a bunch of different countries, then that's actually going to decrease the world tension, and that can impact your ability to do many things as a democratic power. So it is something to consider when you're guaranteeing the independence of other countries. Now, next one is ask for military access. This one is very simple. If they approve of this action, it's going to allow you to move your troops through their lands. It's also going to allow you to put your planes onto their air bases, and you can use their ports as bases for your ships. So it's very, very useful to get military access to neutral countries. Countries that are in your alliance, that are part of the same faction as you, you already have military access with them. So you do not need to ask for military access for any countries that are in your faction. Only countries that are neutral, or not at war with you, and are not your allies. And then offer military access is the same thing, except for you're offering them military access to your country. There's really not much of a reason to offer military access other than the fact that it does affect opinion. But usually if another country, an AI country, needs military access into your country, they're going to ask for it. So you don't actually have to worry about that. Next is the improve relations diplomatic action, and this one is very simple. As soon as you take it, it's going to have a flat cost of 10 political power, but it's also going to reduce your political power by 0.2 every day. So this is something to consider, because political power can be very hard to gain, especially in the early game. And essentially, all this does is increase the opinion of that country with you, which can be very, very useful when you're noticing, when you're hovering over these X's, and it's showing why these countries will not agree to these. If they had a higher opinion of you, then you would have a much greater chance of them accepting your diplomacy. So that's one reason why you would want to increase the opinion of another country. It also makes them look upon you more favorably. So if you're trying to avoid war with somebody, increasing opinion with them can be wise. However, it's not going to help you get out of trouble with the fascist powers if you're some little country that is trying not to get conquered. Increasing opinion with them is not going to stop that. Now, next up is the Non-Aggression Pact. Now, what the Non-Aggression Pact does is it keeps two countries from declaring war on each other. Now, this can be very useful to gain neutrality on a front that you're trying to not have to devote troops towards, such as what Germany did historically with the Soviet Union, so that they could concentrate on taking out France in the West before they had to fight the Soviet Union. Now, this Non-Aggression Pact only keeps the two countries from declaring war on each other for 1 year. You'll see in the tooltip, 12 months. That's the time. And it can't be broken during that 12-month period. Once you get past that 12-month period, there are some rules in order for you to be able to break it. And the tooltip essentially explains this for you, but between X amount of month, so you will need X percentage of their amount of divisions stationed along our common border in order for you to declare war. So it can be broken after 12 months, but it is dependent on the amount of troops that are on the borders there, and the amount that you need is reduced the further along that Non-Aggression Pact goes. Next up is invite to faction. That's essentially to ally with that country. They will become part of your faction, most likely permanently. The AI, I've never seen the AI leave a faction before, not willingly anyway. They can be forced out when there's a coup and then the coup takes over the country. But that's pretty much the only time I've seen the faction AI leave factions. So this is when you're talking about the AI, it's a permanent thing. They're going to become part of your alliance, whether they access the allies, the Comintern, or your another faction that you have created. Now, this is what you're going to use this when you're hovering over this opinion here, why they will not or will accept. All right, so you can see here when we're looking at Italy, they have a positive of 11 and a negative of 70 here. And we need to get one more positive than we have negative. Now, if we look at the negatives, which is all the way down at the bottom there, you'll see they have a base reluctance of negative 20. That's just the base. That means that in order to get them to accept that, you need to have a positive of 21, at least 21. You also see that we're getting negative 50 because they're a major nation, so that makes them less likely to join the faction. So we're going to need to get a positive of 71, one more than that negative 70, in order to get them to join our faction. We're already getting 10 due to the fact that Italy is likely to accept fascist pressure, and then we're getting 1 from the opinion. So if we were to increase our opinion with Italy, then it would make them more likely to join our faction. And there's other ways as well. For instance, if we were looking at another country here, for instance, France, when you hover over this, you'll see that they have a different ideology of negative 60. That's going to be the primary factor that's going to be keeping other countries from wanting to join your faction, especially if you're the Axis, just because most countries are not fascist. So in order to get them to join your faction, you're going to need to increase that fascist support, and we'll be going over that in a little bit. But the primary ways that you're going to be able to get countries to join your faction when they're not willing to is to increase the opinion, and of course to increase the party loyalty of your party in their country. For instance, Italy, that wouldn't help us because they're already fascist. However, there's also other ways as well, national focuses to increase with them, and countries just become more likely as the war goes on to join your faction if they feel like they are threatened by the faction that you are currently fighting. So you see here, it is green that we could send them the offer to join our faction, but they would refuse. While with France here, they are not allowed to join a faction because they have to. The world tension needs to be at 80% in order for them to join a faction. So it's grayed out. So we can't even send it to them, and they would not accept anyways. Now the next one down here is to start Lend-Lease. Now Lend-Lease is where you send equipment to another country that is currently at war. Now, what's great about this is you do not actually need to be in the same war with the country. So, for instance, in a historical situation, the U.S. could be neutral, but still kind of be favoring the Allies and would like to help them by sending equipment. This is one way to do it with the Lend-Lease. Of course, Lend-Lease is named off of what the U.S. did, so that's why I thought it would be a good example. But you could do it even when you are at war. When you guys are at war together, you can still do Lend-Lease and send them supplies. However, you notice the one rule here, of course, is that they do have to be at war. France is not at war, so we cannot send Lend-Lease to them. And you can send all sorts of equipment to them, guys. You can send tanks to them. You can send infantry equipment. You can, infantry weapons. You can send them tanks. You can send them planes, bombers, fighters. The only thing you cannot send them is ships. There's no way to send ships, just equipment. So if you can produce it in the equipment screen, then you can send it to that country. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, if you're trying to help a country out, the best way is usually to use your troops. However, if you're neutral, you're not in the war, then this is one way to help out. Another thing is just to help a weaker country that you don't want them to fold up against a superior enemy of yours. And then finally, one thing I really like using Lend-Lease for is that there's no way to get rid of equipment. Once you built it, you always have it until it breaks or whatever, is no longer usable. If you have some really old equipment, it can just kind of, especially like old planes, it can be kind of irritating every time you're trying to build air wings to have to look through this long list of different types of planes, of older models of planes. So one thing to do is to send your older model of planes to another country, to one of your allied countries, and they can make use of it because it may be better, especially if they're a minor country. It may be better than what they currently have, or they might not even have those planes. So that's one way to get rid of your old equipment, is through using Lend-Lease. Now, the next two here are Send Volunteers and Expeditionary Force. Now, there's a major difference between these two. Now, Send Volunteers, you can only send volunteers if a country is at war, just like with the Lend-Lease. And you cannot send volunteers to a country if they're in the same war that you are in. If you guys are both in a war, you cannot send, you're both fighting, you're France and the UK, and you're both fighting Germany. The UK cannot send volunteers to France. Now, volunteers, the way they work is it'll take, once you decide to send volunteers, you're going to select which one of your armies you want to send to that country. So you may have to create an army so that you can click on them and send them. And then once you do that, it's going going to take a certain amount of time before they actually arrive. And there'll be a little tooltip here that will tell you, or a little icon up here that'll tell you how long it will be until your volunteers arrive in that country. Now, once they arrive, the great thing about volunteers is that you are in control of those forces. You're able to help them fight the war. The most common time that volunteers are used are in the Spanish Civil War. The Soviet Union will often send volunteers to Republican Spain, and then Italy and Germany would send volunteers to Nationalist Spain. And once you get those troops in there, you can control them, move them around. It's going to gain you army experience, so that's very useful. It's also going to get experience for your troops. However, there is a limit on how many troops you can send that is based on the total amount of divisions that you currently have. You can only send a certain fraction of your total amount of divisions to that country, so it's not going to be very many. Usually by the time of Spanish Civil War, we're talking about maybe sending anywhere from, depending on how many divisions you have, 2 to 5 divisions over here to Spain. So it can make a difference, but you're not going to win the war alone, just you and your volunteers, and that's to keep it from becoming overpowered. Now we have Expeditionary Forces, which is quite a bit different than volunteers, even though it is essentially the same ideal. You are sending them divisions. However, the major differences are, first, you can be in the same war together. So if we're the UK and this is France, and we're fighting Germany, we can send an expeditionary force over here to France, even though we're both at war with Germany. Now, another major difference with the Expeditionary Force is that you will not be in control of them. If you give these units to France, France will now manage them. They'll decide where they best go. They will control where they're going to be attacking and what they're going to be doing. And you lose full control over them, though you can ask for your Expeditionary Force back. And that will be done with this button below, where you ask to have all expeditionary forces returned. As far as who supplies the expeditionary forces, the equipment is going to be coming from you. So you're going to need to keep, it's not a way to not have to supply equipment to your divisions. You're still going to have to supply equipment. Now, as for manpower, this is something that's a little bit unclear. It would make sense for the manpower to be coming out of their manpower pool, and I haven't actually done any tests on this myself. However, there's a lot of people that are on the forums saying that the manpower does not come from their pool. It actually comes from yours. So if we're the UK and we're sending troops over here, France will be the one that has to supply the manpower to those expeditionary forces. It makes absolutely no sense, so I'm really hoping that's not the case. If it is, I think that's a bug. But yeah, I don't know for sure. As I said, I have not tested it, but that is the rumor. So that would be one negative to accepting expeditionary forces if it's true. Another negative when it comes to accepting expeditionary forces when AI countries, offer them to you, which they will. They'll offer them a lot. If they're not a major country, if they're a minor country, there's a very good chance that they're going to be offering their divisions to you in the form of expeditionary forces. And a negative of that is that you're going to have to control them yourself. You're going to have to, that's one more thing you're going to have to be concerned about. So sometimes it is better to allow them to control their own units. However, a positive of accepting those expeditionary forces, especially from the AI, is that the AI is not very good with managing its troops. So sometimes accepting expeditionary forces can be very, very good just because you can make better use of their divisions. And then on the other hand, sometimes you just want to use them for like garrison duties. You don't want to put your own divisions on there, and you can use theirs for that. And if you use it for that, if the rumor about the manpower is true, then it wouldn't really affect it if you kept them on garrison duty. Alright, so the next diplomatic action is boost party popularity. Now all this does is increase the popularity of one of the parties, the communist, the fascist, or the Democratic Party. And you just click on it, you pick the party you want to increase, and then click send, and then it'll start ticking up. You'll notice that the daily drift 0.10, that's how much is going to be drifting by 0.10 every day, is going to cost us 0.25 political power per day. So these are limiting. You're not going to be able to do this with every country because you're just not going to have the political power to do so. And political power, as I said, especially in the early game, can be very hard to come by. So it's something to consider. However, you're definitely going to want to do this with some countries, especially if you're a major country, because it opens up two things. First of all, it's going to make them more likely to join your faction. They're very unlikely to join your faction if you guys are different political parties. So as I stated earlier in the video, this is something you may want to do if you're trying to get a country that's neutral or another political party to join your faction. You may want to boost your own party popularity. And then the other thing you may want to use this for is the one right below it, stage a coup. Now what staging a coup is this is when you're attempting to get a rebellion in this country, a rebellion that is of another political party from the one that is currently ruling. So for instance, we have the Democratic Party here in France, so we could support a coup of two different kinds of political parties, the fascist and the communist. And so if we wanted to support the fascist here, then we would need to select which state we want the rebellion to start in, and we can select it through here, or we can select it on the map, any one of these states here. Now the only rule when it comes to which state you can select for your coup to start in is that the state cannot border the state that holds the country's capital. So France's capital here is in Paris here, so we cannot select any of these states that are around it. But we can select anyone that's not touching that state. Now, staging a coup is going to cost you a lot of political power, guys, a lot. You'll see that it's going to cost us 0.5 daily until it reaches 200 total. So that's right there would be 400 days. So that's how long it's going to take for the coup to finally erupt. We're also going to need to give them infantry equipment. We have to give them 5,000 infantry equipment, which is really not a big deal. Now, the state that you select here is just kind of the capital state, basically, which is going to be important because the other country is probably going to need to seize that capital state in order to completely wipe out the coup. So that is important. However, that's not going to be the only state that may rebel. How powerful the coup is when it happens, essentially how many states it's going to be getting, is based on how strong that political party is in this country. So if we were to support a coup of the fascist party, they would be very, very weak because there are no fascists in this country. However, if we were to support a coup of the communist party here, they would actually emerge to be quite powerful, or much more powerful than the fascists anyway, because they have 30% influence here. Hence why when you're planning on staging a coup, you're going to want to get the popularity of whatever party you're going to be doing the coup for. You're going to want to get their strength up as high as you possibly can. And the higher you have it, the more powerful they're going to be, the more states they're going to have, and the more likely they are going to succeed in their coup. Also, you helping them in that coup is going to play a major factor in whether they succeed or not. Now, once that coup erupts, it's going to be a separate tag, a separate country that you can do diplomacy with. So, for instance, the fascist France is Vichy France, and when you stage a coup, then Vichy France is going to pop up, wherever you set them to pop up, and then you're going to be able to do full diplomacy with them, including inviting them to your faction. So, this is one way to get another country who just will not cooperate with you, and one way to get them into your faction to ally with them. However, it's not really overpowered. It is very difficult to use. Obviously, you have to spend all that time, all that political power to get your party popularity up, and then you're also going to have to spend all that time and investment, political power, to be able to get that coup to start. So it is very difficult to do. If you're planning on starting a coup, then you need to ensure that you have lots and lots of time to do so. You need to start on it very early. For instance, if you want to do a coup here in the U.S., a fascist coup in the U.S., as Germany or Italy, you're going to have to start investing in it probably immediately, because it's going to take a very, very long time to get this. They're at 99% Democratic Party, so it's going to take a very long time to get the fascists where they're powerful enough to really actually be able to win that coup. Alright guys, so that is all of the diplomatic actions. Now the next thing I wanted to discuss is partisans. And in order to discuss this, we're going to go ahead and switch over to a save game that I have so that I can better show you how the partisans work. Alright guys, so we're into a United Kingdom campaign of mine. I have completely occupied the state of Ethiopia from Italy, who was holding this state after they had conquered it. And now we have some issues with partisans here. Luckily not many, so we're able to easily manage them. Now when you click on any of these states here and look at the state screen, you're going to see a little button here that shows you resistance strength, and that shows you how strong the partisans are in that province. Now they're at 0% in all these provinces, so we're not having any issues with partisans here. And you can see why. Right below that, we see the resistance daily grow is negative 1.7%. So that means every single day that is being reduced by negative 1.7, hence why we are at 0% right now. And below that, you can see why it is being reduced by 1.7%. Now, first of all, you see we have several negatives. These would be increasing the daily growth of the resistance. We have a 0.10%, a 0.5, and a 0.10. Now, these are the victory points in this area. The biggest one here is the capital. It's the one that is increasing. If we look at 0.5% every single day, and then we have two more victory points that are each increasing it by 0.1%, and that is based on how much the victory points are worth. So each one, every victory point is going to increase it by 0.1%. So this one is worth 5 victory points, so that's why it is 0.5%. So more important provinces, larger provinces such as Moscow or Berlin are going to increase that resistance strength of that state by a lot more. And remember, this is state-based. This is not province-based. So those are what the negatives that are influencing this state here. Now, but you'll see our occupation policy multiplier is reducing it by negative 40%, and we're going to look at that in a second. And then we're also getting a negative 2.10% from the divisions in the state. This is the primary way that you're going to reduce the resistance strength in the states, is by adding divisions here to suppress the partisan forces here. Now, how much a division is going to reduce the partisan strength is based off of two things. One is based off the size of the unit. So you can't just have a division that has 1 battalion and think that that's going to impact the partisans here as much as a division that has 10 battalions. And we can see by clicking on any one of these division templates how much it is able to suppress by. We're getting a 3.0 from suppression, and that's because of the battalions that we have in here. You can also get a suppression bonus. The primary way, and the suppression is different based upon what kind of units you have. Some units are better at suppressing than others. For instance, one of the best units at suppressing is cavalry. That's the primary thing I use cavalry for, is to use them to suppress partisan forces, because frankly cavalry isn't really all that good in combat, but they are very good for garrison duties. Another thing that you can do to drastically increase the suppression abilities of your units is add military police, the support unit military police, to your division templates. I'll often do that with my cavalry to make them even better at suppressing in the provinces. And of course, you can always increase the size of the divisions as well to make them better with suppression, or just adding more divisions to those states. Now, this seems like a lot of micromanagement, guys, and it really would be trying to make sure that every single one of these states that needs to be is suppressed. But one thing I like to use, and this is what I think is this button is intended for, is the garrison area. With the garrison area, you can tell your units to garrison that area, and they're going to occupy all of the areas that you tell them to, and through doing so, they're going to be suppressing any partisan forces. And it's very easy to just click it and add new states to that, or unadd them, just as you need them. And then if you have a garrison army over here, then you can easily add to them. What I like to do as I take new areas is just have one large garrison force. And so if I'm Germany and I'm conquering, and just have one large garrison force and just add units as they need it. Whenever that button pops up that tells me, hey, there's more partisan forces, it's telling me the garrison does not have enough units to do their job. And then I'll go ahead and throw some more into that army. Now let's go back down to Ethiopia. There's still one more little spot that we need to look at here. Underneath the resistance daily growth and all the things that are affecting that, you're going to see the occupation policy. Now, one thing I should mention, guys, is that you only have problems with partisans in territory that you are occupying. So if we were to finally win this war against the Axis, then we went to the peace screen and we picked what we wanted, what we didn't. The areas that we took control of, those would no longer be considered occupied. We now have full control of those areas, so we no longer have to worry about partisan forces in those areas. So if you are having lots of trouble with partisan forces, then one thing that you're probably going to want to do is hurry up and get that war over with, so that you can make peace and then no longer have to worry about them. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the final thing that is affecting this. When you hover over this, you're seeing occupation policy gentle. Now the way that you change your occupation policy for an area is you click on your flag up here, or hotkey Q, And then you're going to see a little button down here at the bottom that says Manage Occupied Territories. Now, when you click on this enables you to actually do a couple different things. First of all, it does allow you to release nations. So we could release, the Kingdom of Egypt or Palestine here, and we can also return territory to other countries. So, for instance, we could return Hong Kong to China, or you could return these two areas to Canada. So that is another thing that you can do here: release nations, return territory. So here you'll see our occupation policy. Now we have one for Italy, and that would apply to Ethiopia. Because that is their territory, any territory that we're taking from Italy. And then you also see we have occupation policy for these two countries as well. Now, occupying costs you political power every day. As you'll see when we hover over our political power, we are losing 0.02 from occupations. We're getting that from these two here. And you can also affect that with your occupation policy. Now, there's 4 different policies. There's gentlest, gentle, harsh, and harshest. And there's negatives and positives on both sides of these. Now, if we look at gentlest, this is the best one for when it comes to resistance growth. They're going to grow a lot slower if you're doing gentlest or even gentle. Harsh as well. They're not going to be as bad. However, it's going to be full on. They're going to get their full resistance growth when they're doing on the harshest setting here. And another negative as you go towards the right is that the occupation cost is going up. You'll notice it hits here, it's 0.04, 0.02, 0.01, and then down here at the gentlest is we're not going to be getting any political power cost with this option. Now, the negative of going on the left is that it's going to hurt the amount of resources and factories that you get from that country. So the oil, the steel, the aluminum, all the resources that you get from that country, you're going to be getting a lot less of them. At the lowest setting here, you're seeing that we're getting only we're getting negative 30% of local resources. Well, if we go here on the farthest setting here, we don't have any penalty to the amount of resources we get. And that's the same with the factories. You'll notice that the factories here, we're going to be getting a lot less control of the factories in that area with the farthest left that we go. So the more gentle we go, the less factories we're going to get from that occupied territory. While we're in here on the harshest setting, we get we can have full use of their factories. And then finally, the last thing that is affected here is the manpower. You're going to get more manpower from that area on the gentlest setting, and you're not going to get any on the harshest setting because that country is not, the people are not willing to join your armies. So if we look at it again on the farthest left setting, that's going to make the partisans be less effective. They're going to bother you a lot less. The growth is going to be a lot lower. We're also going to get more manpower than any other setting from this area. Now, frankly, you're not going to get a lot of manpower, period, from your occupied territories, guys. So it's manpower's, it's going to be very minor, the amount of manpower you're getting, even on this setting. But of course, over here, you're not going to get any manpower. But the negative of over here, so positives, resistance growth, and manpower. Negative is that, and also political power, that's another positive, so 3 positives here. And then the 2 negatives are the resources and factories. You're going to be getting a lot less resources and factories. Now on here on the right, the 2 negatives, obviously you're going to be getting no manpower from those provinces. It's also going to have a much higher occupation cost. And then finally, the partisans are going to be much more active. It's going to grow a lot quicker. You're going to need to devote a lot more troops here to suppress them. And then the positives are you're going to have full use of their resources and their factories in that area. So it's just really based on what your needs are, on which one you're going to be using for that. And that's it, guys. That's all I wanted to cover, diplomacy and partisans, in this video. Now, I don't have any plans for part 7 right now. The only other thing I think that has been asked about a few times that I haven't covered yet is nukes. So maybe a late game type of tutorial that shows kind of the more late game techs like nuclear weapons and how you use those. That may be something that I could do. Of course, I'd have to get that set up. I'd have to have a late game save that I can show you guys that with. But other than that, I don't really have anything else that I was planning on covering, or I can't think of anything. But if there is anything that you guys still have questions about that you would like me to do a video on, then please sound off in the comments and let me know what that is, or what area that would be in. And if it is something that I think does call for a video tutorial, then we will do a part 7. But as of right now, I don't have anything that I can really think of that I think needs to be covered. Diplomacy was kind of the big one that I did not do, so I'm glad that I got that done. Now, if you still have questions, if you're still kind of confused by the game, and this is a very, very complicated game with a very steep learning curve, although it is a lot easier than the previous entry in this series, in my opinion. So if you do still have questions regarding this game, and I can definitely see how you would, these tutorials, really, they just show you how to do things. They don't really explain well why to do them, or when to do them, or where, where that would be applicable, where you may want to do that, and I think a Let's Play does that much better. And I actually have a Let's Play which is more of a tutorial style. I do try and discuss everything I'm doing and why I'm doing it as much as possible. I give my thoughts on things, and so it is meant to be more of a tutorial style Let's Play, and just being able to see me do these things in practice, I think will help out. So if you're still having problems with the game, one thing you may want to do is go check out that Let's Play series. We're currently about 28 episodes in, so it is kind of far along, so there are a lot of videos for you to watch now, and we're playing as the country of Italy. I actually did a community poll where the community voted on which country we're going to be playing as, and they picked Italy. And we also did a poll for what our grand strategy was going to be, and the anti-Comintern strategy was selected. So essentially our goal as Italy is to completely wipe communism off of the face of the map. So it's been a really fun and interesting campaign for me. I've really enjoyed it so far. And I think it's watching that Let's Play could help you kind of fill in the blanks between what this tutorial covered. So I think, being able to see, the tutorials are very good to see things happening in theory, to be explained in theory how it's supposed to work, while the Let's Play can be better to show you how it works in practice. So I will go ahead and I'll add a link of some sort into this video so that you guys can check that out if you want to, since this may be the last tutorial. I don't know, we'll have to see. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. Consider subscribing to the channel, especially if you enjoyed this tutorial series. It really helps us out, and it's free, guys. It's free to hit that button, and we really appreciate it. All right, thanks for watching, guys.